basically,
Every half hour, just
you got hammer, you got collets, you got casing. All of our collets are stamped on them. See, these are 16-inch collets by half-inch wall. So your collets can tell you what size wall that case is up. We also have sheets on all of our collets, all of our collars to tell you if the guy says I want to ram 54-inch casing, we got a sheet that says, okay, it needs to ram 3/4 wall. So we've got all that stuff sorted out. So it's not, you don't have to remember it all. When you're prepping your pit, we're going to pretend right now that we started our ram, we pushed in our pipe. Right here is our wall. This is the wall that we just pounded our first pipe into. It's really important on those drawings, it shows you got a weld bit. So that makes sure that you can weld all the way around this thing. One thing you don't want to do is have your weld bit right at your wall, because you need a shelf of material here, probably a good 3 or 4 feet long, to make sure that you got this heavy old hammer on here. Casing comes over that weld bit, you don't want it falling down. Screw up your grade, especially on that first stick. It'll also make every pipe that you weld on there extremely hard to weld on, because now all that pipe's trying to go lower than what you got your I-beam set at, or whatever your traps are. On the lead edge of your case, we talked about soil shoes. One real easy way that the guys do is they just cut off a ring of here and split it, weld one on the inside, one on the outside. The width of this soil shoe will depend a lot on the ground that you're pounding in. If you're in a real firm clay ground, all you need to do is make sure that that's cutting an overbite inside and outside. If you're in a real sandy ground, and back to our burst head scenario with the nail and how much anchoring area you have with your nail, this little bit of anchoring area sucks. So you might make this thing, your soil shoe, that long. I've seen them, the 72-inch pipe we drove up in Canada was fucking 14 feet long. So yeah, it was massive, massive. So what kind of soil was it? It was sandy. Sandy, yeah, but yeah, big hammer on it. So there's a lot of recoil they were talking about, but so this can grow and shrink depending on the soils that you're in. So we got the soil shoes. We got our casing. There's a couple different kinds of casing out there. For years and years and years, we did not want to pound on spiral weld pipe. We've got that figured out with some new manufacturers that they have a pipe that's okay to do it. Just make sure you're checking where it came from. If you have a pipe, there's called DOM pipe, which is seamless pipe, drawn over mandrel pipe. Great pipe, best pipe, most expensive pipe. But you will get these pipes that they have a single seam on them. If you got a pipe with a single seam on it, when you're putting your collets in, if this is your seam going down where this pipe was welded together, make sure you're covering the seam with the round part of the collets.
Right. You don't want to.
Right, because that's where your wedge effect is going to go. You don't want to. I'm talking about any single seam pipe.
Oh, I mean the factory seam.
Yeah, the factory seam. You want to make sure you're covered with the round part of your collet. You don't want to put this on there. So
I will say they seem to start pretty easy and wedge up in there as compared to the big hammer. As well, the stuff we've done has been real easy to get started. They just stay until you reverse them, and they're in there.
yeah, all our hammers, if you got a little finesse with the oiler, and you got an operator that's able to pull this in here tight, you're good. What you start out with, you got your casing laid out. It's loose. It's laying on an I-beam, it's laying on a track, it might be laid on boards like this, depending on how accurate you want to be. So now you got that. These collets are loose, the hammer's loose, you got your air hoses out. You got your lifting straps coming up to your backhoe bucket. You got your backhoe bucket lifting this, it's holding it in there. And now what you want your backhoe bucket operator to do, or track hose, you got a big enough hammer, is to start moving this forward, down. So this front strap will be loose. That back strap is right around this indent, and you're trying to get that thing leaning into this as far as you can until like he's almost on the top of the casing, pulling this stuff all in there. So now you got all that tension. Now you can go back to your oiler. You got everything shut off. Your power's coming in from your compressor. You got air coming in. You got your forward line, and you'll notice we're missing the muffler on this one, but it's the muffler's on the reverse for a rammer. The reason why the muffler's on the reverse side on a rammer or on any of our big hammers is the striker is so heavy. When we're starting this out, that striker outweighs that casing by hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So when you're trying to get it started, you'll open up this exhaust vent, and it does the same thing as tuning over there. It shortens up the stroke, eases up the recoil on it, so that when you pop this open, you might go boom, you just get a chug. And as soon as you feel that thing moving, you're gonna find out how little you can open it up and have that thing hit. You want that hitting as light as you can, and you're gonna drive 2 feet, shut it off. Check your pipe. Get it going again, drive 2 feet, shut it off. That first casing is absolutely critical to where that one's going, so goes the rest of your pipe. So you can make adjustments up to maybe 15 feet in there depending on your soil, but only on that first stick.
And you would have been able to lock it in?
Yep.
You've already locked it in?
Already locked it in. It'll lock in pretty light tap.
You're not using a cable or a chain or anything to tie this to that?
Nope. The hammer.
24 we
Yeah, 16 and up we have cinch kits that tie from the back of the hammer up and all that all in.
But 16 and below is locked in and solid.
12 and below locked in.
12 and below locked in and solid.
Yeah.
Everybody's surprised you how quick and easy. That did me anyway.
Yeah, it's just it'll be like flop, flop, dink, and then you'll just see everything just seize up right there. Everything just locks up, and you're like, holy shit! Because it's a it's a tapered lock on the nose of the hammer. And I mean, once that thing's locked in, you can stand on that hammer, and you're not gonna get it out of there.
That's why you take the big fucking hammer with the PTD on your whack with the extra.
I love that everybody's seen that video. All right, so
That's what his Jim told me how to do it.
now you got your first stick in there. You got
That's the
everything shut
gospel.
off. As your steps to increase the power to this hammer is the first thing you're doing is you got this thing popped, it's hitting, now you can hit a little bit harder. You got a good anchor in there. The first thing you do is start taking this off of there. That's going to increase the throw on your hammer. Then you can start increasing this. You might not get this thing fully wide open until the end of your second stick, because that striker is still outweighing that casing, and if the ground isn't grabbing that pipe, you'll see swimming, where the striker's sucking the casing back.
We don't have it out here, but on the 24, Kent, I was so glad he was there because we had 2 loads coming to the air compressor. He never even opened the second line until we probably had 2 joints of pipe in there. I was like, oh, when you gonna let it rip? He goes, not yet.
Yep.
Just calm out, you know.
Watching that casing.
Exactly.
Yep. That's how you always get this piece of chalk, and you go on your I-beam, and you mark the chalk, you mark the thing, and you watch that line. It's dizzying to try to watch it go that slow, but you can watch that chalk mark go back and forth and see if you're swimming or not.
I will say we had on the HDD extraction deal, we were trying to pull out 2,000 foot of drill pipe, and we actually put the end of the casing on that end, and at night they were just welding that up, put a band over the outside of it, heating it up. It lasted 2 days on that one piece of casing.
Yeah.
Beat the shit out of it.
So now we drove our casing this stick of casings all the way in. We shut off our power. We get our backhoe operator back up there, hooked up to our straps, just get tension on it. Go over to our reverse, give it a pop, give it a pop, give it a pop. 2, 3 pops normally, they can just pop right out of there, and it's hanging by the slings. You set it aside, pull your collets aside, and now you got your next stick of pipe all going. Which brings me to one big point. In a heads up deal, it's worth mentioning our collets. Our collets versus TTs, because we have reverse on our hammers, it allows us to have a larger engagement area on our collets. The bigger engagement area you have in here, the less likely you are to flare this casing. Once you start flaring this casing, a huge pain because we talked about putting a bevel on and all that. You have to cut this off to get back to round pipe and put a new bevel on it. So the deeper engagement area you have, the less likely it is to flare the casing. Why TT's collets are shorter than ours, and I don't know if they're that short, but they are shorter than ours, is because they don't have reverse on the hammer. So when they go to back the hammer out, they either have to cut the casing to relieve the tension on the collets, or try to wiggle the hammer to get the nose, and they need that short engagement area to get that leverage to start wiggling that, or they take a huge track hoe and they pound on the hammer to shake it loose. So
one thing they have that I want you to
when you're pounding in, say our holes back, back to like our original scenario, this is the face of our pit. It's likely, I've seen it 8-10 feet out, where you'll start seeing mud oozing out between these cracks on the collets. And that's because all that compressed soil that's in here, we started shaking it and cutting it, and it allows it a horizontal unloading. So it's compressed vertically. Now you've got this vibrating pipe going in there that allows it to start to come out this way. TT's got a nice feature where they call it a soil chute or a soil window. It's basically a piece that goes in front of the collets or
back of the wall.
Back
of
so
the
it goes
segments.
So you go hammer, and then you have a soil chute, and then you collets. And basically, it's like having a big window in the side of your pipe, so that as the ground comes out and it hits the collets, with this setup, we start compressing it. What we need to do is we see that soil coming out of there, we stop, pop the hammer out, clear out some of that shit, put it back in, keep ramming. With these windows in the side, TT just dumps it out on the side.
The bigger ones, you can actually get in there with a bar or a shovel and help it out, especially if you got some big rock coming through. It'll help relieve it. But you got to remember, if this is completely compacted the soil in there and it's stuck here, that means the whole idea is this thing is it's knifed through the ground. If that's a plug, that's a full plug. Not all of a sudden you're displacing soil rather than eating it up and cutting through it.
Right. I don't know. We did that 54-inch job over there. Literally, when he took the hammer off, that come in like a sheet of concrete on the back side. That's when they had to auger it out. They bring it out about 30 feet, and because they're only 10-foot pieces of pipe, that 30 feet was just enough to ram it.
You could be under a river or a creek crossing, and if you aren't relieving that, and this is an example with the TT, I've seen a 24-inch hammer under about 10 foot of water, and it shoots up a big geyser. The deal was they did not on that size. It was 96 inch, so they didn't have the soil force for that, and they didn't clean it out far enough inside down in Oregon. So what happened is it just kept hitting, and it was just not eating up the soil. It was pushing, and there was a plug out there, and all the fines. It was hammering and hammering. All the fines come in, so we lost the seal on the outside of the casing and on the inside of the casing, and flooded the whole pit. So you got to be careful. That's why the whole idea that you want to, if you see it filling up, just like Nate says, what we want to do is get in there, take it apart, and get in and clean oils out, because that's, or put oil on our next cable.
Yep. We've had some customers too, like they like the idea. Those TT is pretty proud of those things. Like they charge a lot of money for those soil chutes. They're big, heavy pieces of steel. If you get a guy that's interested in it, you can make them. Like this would get a section of casing and have two windows. Actually, they would cut two D's out of the side, press them in. You have a D like here. You can press those in
they
together.
would go in front of the segments.
This is on your last joint?
No, well, this would be a little segment like a window that you would put on when you strapped everything together. You would have this little piece. You have your collets locked into that piece. This piece, they put a little ring on the inside of it, so it slipped right into this casing, and then put your tabs back here and cinch the whole thing together.
They didn't tackle it. They just slid it, or they did tackle it.
Yeah, once you got really opening up the hammer, you have to.
Is there a particular soil that they favor that excavate or
Expansive
evacuation?
clay. Yeah, clay's probably the worst.
We did.
Sometimes your gravel, like River Run, we found some 72 that, I mean, crazy. It was hitting the collets and you could see 30 feet up into the casing because the face of it just with the vibration started walking its way down. One really neat trick to handle that is when you're starting to pipe in, you know you got some really loose soil. They'll stack sandbags 4 or 5 foot deep on top of each other all the way up the casing. So now when you drive that casing, you're making an artificial plug up front. So the casing starts going forward, the soil is trying to come in, and it hits the sandbag wall, it just starts pulling it back like you're filling a syringe.
So you're creating a plug, and you're attempting to artificially make a plug so you're not going to drown yourself out with water.
Yeah.
And it'll push it to the end. Eventually, after probably your first joint, you'll have those bags out.
Wet, sandy stuff.
There's another technique where if you don't have an auger to clean it out, for instance, like for instance going over across this street and you're in really rocky soil. I don't know if you ever used this technique where went over to the other side, dug out, pushed it all the way over, dug out, put a road plate in front of your end, and you're on that side. Come back over here, kept the hammer on, cut holes right there, and just kept hitting it easy. And because all the rock was in there, it took a long time to do it, but all that rock was migrated out. That's how we cleaned that thing out.
I've never seen that. That would be neat.
Well, it took a long time, but it was you just shook it out, and you're not going to be able to drive through that road plate on the other side.
Right.
So that's a poor man's way to clean it out.
That's now how.
No, it's a congenital. Yeah, I mean cleaning them out. I mean the bigger the casing, like you can blow out up to 30-inch diameter casing. It's not 100% success rate by any means. It's really cool when it happens.
All right.
You know, if that doesn't get it, then you can put a pipe digging, try to blow that through. I've seen jet trucks, depending on the material you're going through. If you're in a lot of sand, I've seen them just shove fire hose in there and just flush it.
Okay.
It just flushes everything out of it. It's a bit messy, but if you have a vac out there,
You are on video now.
Get a reverse jet.